morning everyone, welcome back to the channel. This week my hometown friend Shruthi is visiting Seoul from the US and she's letting me kind of show her around the city. So I thought it'd be a perfect time to also kind of take you guys around and show you what I think would be my ultimate like perfect weekend or sort of short trip to Seoul. I know some of you guys are either planning trips to Seoul or have been before or are hoping to go, and so hopefully this gives you guys a little bit of inspo and I can sort of take you around my favorite spots, show you sort of my Seoul if you will. So I'm really excited. It's Friday, it's basically the weekend and it feels a little bit more like spring. I forgot to film yesterday, but we did sort of like a big Seocheon day, which is one of my favorite neighborhoods here. But we basically visited some of my favorite cafes, favorite vintage store, and also just walked around the area. There's a lot of cute shops and like ceramic stores and things like that. And in general, it's a very chill area, but it has a lot of, in my opinion, sort of like Seoul traditional Korean vibes as well. There's some hanok buildings, there's sort of like a residential community, but it's also a lot of like really cute shops, bookstores, clothing stores, things like that. So it's just a good place to walk around. So we went there, we got some Tibetan curry at one of my favorite restaurants here, and then we also hit up Toksugung in the afternoon, which is in my opinion my favorite palace. And to be totally honest, this is just my opinion, but if you're not a huge history fiend, I don't know if the palaces are like that amazing. I think if you see one, you've kind of seen the general vibe of all of them, and I do think while Gyeongbokgung is like the most impressive and big one, and that's why a lot of people go, I actually prefer the three others, Changgyeonggung, Changdeokgung, and Toksugung, just because they're a lot smaller and cozier and kind of more intricate as well in their design. And I really like Toksugung because there's also a contemporary art museum in the palace as well. So we went there around sunset, we kind of walked around, got to see the palace, and then ended up getting some really good galbi and samgyeopsal by the end of the day. That was kind of like the great first day of Shruthi's trip. And then today you'll see what we get up to, but we're about to head out to sort of like the Dongdaemun, Dongnyo, and Ulchiro area. Very kind of like old Seoul. There's a flea market there, and then also sort of like bars and cafes. One of my favorite cafes is there as well, which I'm excited to take y'all to. So welcome to my perfect weekend in Seoul, and let's get going.
A week now? A little plus one moment. Yeah, like I know. Like what are you got this hat. I'm really trying not to be tourist, but
Where did the time go? How do we move so far away? Holding on, how much can we both take when love is in echo? I can't hear what you're saying when love is in echo.
you're just committing to it.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Went on the napkins.
소스 부족하신 말씀해.
네, 감사합니다.
Hi everyone, please ignore the mess on my bed, but today is Shruthi's last morning here and the last day of our trip, and I just wanted to have a quick chat with you guys before we get on to our little adventures about different neighborhoods in Seoul, and specifically my favorite neighborhoods and recommendations as opposed to maybe more sort of famous touristy neighborhoods and the different vibes that you can get with each. In some ways this is kind of a unique trip because Shruthi told me that she was down to basically go to all the places I enjoyed in Seoul, and she wasn't too interested in seeing like the touristy things or sort of like the shopping areas, which I know is pretty rare when it comes to people traveling to Korea. And honestly, I was so grateful that she trusted me, first of all, and second of all, that we kind of got to see all these places that I feel like really show off the true sort of sides of Seoul that I really love instead of sort of what Seoul wants you to see, I guess. So I guess just starting with the neighborhoods that are pretty popular and touristy and sort of the reasons why, just so you can sense if like you do want to go there or not. On the extreme touristy end, we have Myeongdong, which is a neighborhood that has a lot of shopping and also a lot of hotels. And I think it has like a night market as well, but honestly, I would say the people in this area, it's like 70% tourists. Honestly, I've never been there to meet friends or anything unless someone was visiting, and so I don't think it's a very authentic slice of Seoul. Not that you should care about that too much, but if you really want to shop, there's like everything within like a couple minutes of each other. So I do think that could be worth if shopping is your main priority. Some other big shopping areas, we have Hanam and Seongsu. These are slightly more hip, young, very popular also amongst young Korean people, but they have a lot of the big chain stores, but also kind of like boutiques and sort of fancier stores as well. A lot of bag stores, glasses stores, sort of nice clothes, etc. And so they're fun to look around. There's also a lot of pop-ups in both these areas as well, and a lot of Korean only brands. Again, if one of your main priorities is to shop, I would definitely recommend them. Personally, I don't prefer either area because they are so packed with people. I wouldn't say those areas are particularly my taste, but I do think they have a lot of like cute cafes and a lot of stuff to do. I have met friends there in the past and it's always been fun, so I would recommend it, especially if you are coming with a lot of people and you want to get some stuff. Then another really popular area is Hongdae. This is another sort of like young, hip, formerly artsy area, but honestly I think it's turned into mostly like a gentrified touristy place. There's a really quick turnover for a lot of cafes and like stores in the area, which is unfortunate because I feel like there's not many like gems that will stay for a while, and a lot of it feels like kind of like Instagram cafes, etc. But I do think if you're looking for sort of like cafes that are really well designed and Instagrammable and sort of like shops that are like that as well, Hongdae is definitely worth it. It's also a little bit cheaper, like just the items and stuff tend to be more affordable than Hanam or Seongsu, so if that's something that you're prioritizing, I would definitely recommend Hongdae as well. And lastly, we have Bukchon and Gwanghwamun, which are sort of like the traditional sides of Seoul. There's Gyeongbokgung there, which is a huge palace, and there's sort of the Bukchon Hanok village, which a lot of tourists go to. And if it's your first and only trip to Korea, I do think it could be worth seeing. But like I mentioned earlier, I have other palaces that I actually prefer, and I actually have another traditional area sort of that has a very similar vibe to Bukchon, but I like much more, which is Seochon. I've talked about this area a lot before, but it has the same Hanoks, but it's a little bit more artisan and kind of quiet. A lot of vintage shops, really good coffee shops, etc., and like kind of boutiques. And somehow I don't think a lot of tourists have found it yet, so if you guys are interested, I would honestly hop to the western side of Gyeongbokgung Palace instead of the eastern side, which is where Bukchon is. So I guess that brings me to some of my other favorite neighborhoods that I've shown here. Like I mentioned, Seochon. Another one that I go to all the time is Mangwon and Hapjeong, which are right next to Hongdae actually. So they're really close if you're staying near there, but they're a lot more quiet. I think there's a lot more sort of like independent shops that have been there for a while, and each one feels very like kind of full of personality. They're still very young and have like a bunch of cafes, restaurants, vintage shops, bakeries, whatever, like all the stuff you would want to find, but I just think the neighborhoods are a lot cuter, and so I'd really recommend both of those. And then another area I'm starting to explore a little bit more is closer to Dongdaemun. That's where my favorite cafe Erak is as well, and that area feels very kind of traditional in the sense that it's not like palaces and stuff, but it is a slightly older, more residential side of Seoul. And there's a really cool Dongdaemun market there that has everything that you could ever want. Dongmyo, the flea market we went to, is not far from there. It just is a very Seoul experience, and so I would definitely recommend it if you're into sort of more like traditional style markets and kind of like experiencing another side of the city that isn't as like Instagrammable and like so perfectly polished. And then the last area I'm going to personally recommend is called Haebangchon, and this is near the stations Samgakji and also Itaewon as well, but it's right next to Namsan, and so it's right up on that hill, and all the views from this area are incredible. There's a ton of cute cafes and restaurants here, as well as sort of like a little market that has like more art stuff and kind of like cute shops. I will say this area is pretty pricey just because I think it's like a popular date spot and things like that, but I think it's definitely worth it for the views alone, and just the vibe of the neighborhood is very like winding alleyways. It's really cute and something that I think you could only experience in Seoul as well. So yeah, those are sort of like my unsolicited thoughts on Seoul neighborhoods. I hope that can kind of provide some info or just some help for you guys if you're planning to travel to Seoul. I am not shading the touristy activities or areas at all, but I think personally I always want to visit sort of more local areas when I travel because I think that's where a lot of the heart of the city is. And I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on my favorite spots in the city. Obviously, feel free to check out the cafes and restaurants we went to in this video. And yeah, let's get on to the last day of our trip.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.